What's going on, everybody? Nicholas Moriano here. I wanted to do something a little different and kind of tell you about what it was like covering the 2023 NFL Scouting Combine. So much happened from the Monday the CHGO Bears crew arrived to Indianapolis and the Friday where most of the group left, and actually just leaving is a big part of the story in itself, and we'll get to that eventually. But where we have to start is the Airbnb. So I was the first one to get to Indy. I drove by myself and got there. Got used the code, got the key, enter in, and I immediately see to my right this is giant bookcase, bunch of books on there. It's even got that little ladder thing where you have to step up to get the top books on the top shelf, which I'm like, all right, this is cool. There's a record player. And then as I'm kind of scanning the room, I look to the next room. And this is what makes this Airbnb the most interesting Airbnb and also terrifying. It's a bunch of these dolls. The Raggedy Ann dolls. Literally everywhere you look. On my left, there's a bookcase, and there's Raggedy Ann dolls in the bookcase. On top of the bookcase, there's like pictures on the wall where Raggedy Ann dolls are just inside of the glass, literally everywhere. And I'm saying to myself, and I'm not even entering the room. This is me looking into it. Hell no. There's no way. I'm the only person here, and you expect me to just go and scout out this Airbnb by myself? It wasn't happening. And I thought initially, I got there first, got the key, got in, I'm going to get, the best room. Didn't happen. Thankfully, not too long after I'm like basically in shock, Adam Hogue, Mark Carmen arrive, and then we go explore together. And we're maybe shock's a little too extreme, but we're just like, what is happening here? So when I do see these dolls, the next thing I think of is like, all right, that next morning, and I'm usually up pretty early, I'm definitely going to put one of these dolls in the middle of the first entry room so that when somebody comes down, they're going to think that this house was haunted. And it's not haunted. And that was one of the first initial reactions I was thinking of, like, oh man, I've always wanted to stay in a haunted house for some reason. I don't know why. But now I'm going to get an opportunity to, even though, again, it wasn't haunted, but I'm going to put this doll in the middle of the room and see how people react. And of course, the next morning, people are like, what's going on? Who did this? And I'm just kind of laughing to myself, knowing, I had to, right? You just had to mess with, everybody that was staying there. It wasn't just the CHGO Bears crew, but our guys from Phoenix, everyone from Denver. So, it was, that first night, though, I definitely was thinking of, wanted to sleep with one eye open, knowing that these Raggedy Ann dolls were everywhere. But we had to start the story there. It's such an interesting, different Airbnb, and it really, I think, I don't know if it set the mood, but just knew this combine was going to be a little different. Let's actually transition to, the combine itself. The Indianapolis Convention Center, this massive, gigantic building that hosts the NFL Scouting Combine, basically, with all the interviews, coaches, the GMs that are there. Everybody's in this convention center, and not even taking up half of it because of how big this building is. But you go into this one part of it, and then you see a bunch of podiums. 8 podiums, 3 side podiums, where players, coaches will end up speaking. And I think what we did with our CHGO Bears crew, we talked to a lot of people that Bears fans would be interested in. And I thought I asked some pretty good questions that Bears fans wanted to hear from. I got a chance to ask Will Anderson, one of the top defensive prospects, NFL prospects in this draft class, a question. And
Well, how do you think you would fit with a Bears defense where you'd be fourth in the defensive end, have your hand in the dirt? How do you think it would feel?
Yeah, I feel like football is all about embracing the change. So, no matter, what type of defense I get in, I'm going to adapt to it, and I'm going to be able to embrace the change and embrace the challenge that's there and, learn the lessons that come with it. And that's what I'm very excited about. Just whatever defense I get in, learning how to operate throughout it and having fun doing it.
I thought, again, our group did a very good job. But it was also crazy because the other arguably top defensive prospect, Jalen Carter, 30 minutes before he's supposed to go to his podium number 1, there's a warrant out for his arrest. And I remember just everyone thinking, what? And there's a group of people actually still at the podium. I was one of them. And we're all thinking to ourselves, he's not showing up, but we can't leave not knowing if he will. And, later came out that he wasn't even in Indianapolis, traveled back to Georgia to clear things up. And crazy. Made for, I would say, a very memorable, first couple of days there when you're supposed to talk to these prospects, learn a little bit more about them, and then that news drops. But yeah, that was nuts. But it was also great just getting to know a lot of the other players that were there, kind of get to know not just the football player, but the person that obviously these NFL teams are going to be looking into.
What position did you play in hockey?
I was a defender.
Defender? Were you a big hitter?
I was.
Were you a fighter?
We couldn't fight without getting kicked out, unfortunately. So, a few times.
So you were heavily penalized, or?
I think it's probably not good to say, but in the last 2 years, I think I led the league in penalties, just due to my size, unfortunately, which was just kind of part of the game. There's really not that many big kids that play hockey, so just due to my size and my weight, I was able to sustain a lot of penalties that, in my eyes, I don't think were fair. Thank you, guys.
That's always a good experience, but I think the NFL Scouting Combine, now this being my 4th one, is it 4? 2019, 20, it got shut down during COVID. Yeah, so my 4th NFL Scouting Combine, it's really the nightlife. And it is such a interesting dynamic there. Who you meet, what information you get from everybody. And it's something that I think most fans don't obviously get to experience, but it's a big part of it. I will definitely, the more combines I've been going to, the more I'm seeing how important this aspect of the combine really is. And, there's one night where, and I forget the hour or what time it was exactly, but Greg Braggs just brings over Rich Eisen, who obviously is, hosting the combine, is going to be the voice you're going to hear, right? And he just looks over to me, and we had Mark Carman, Adam Hogue, Lawrence Benedetto, Greg Braggs, and myself there. And he looks over, he's like, I like this. He's like, the stash, the fade. And I'm like, all right, shoot, if Rich Eisen likes it, this look is staying. It can't go anywhere else. But there's that, and you just never know who you're going to meet. And that's what makes it so appealing and so interesting. And it's just a big part of it, like I said earlier. And, most of the times we're not even, since we're doing so much work, writing articles, doing podcasts, and trying to get video content out on the, on social media, that we're not even eating most of the time. So we're eating dinner and just hanging out and having a good time. But the nightlife at the NFL Scouting Combine is such a huge part of it. And like I said, now that this is my 4th year and just getting to talk to certain people, now that's just a part of what you need to do if you're a part of the media. Got to go out. You got to be in it. And this was Mark Carman's first time, and I remember he said, this is fascinating. The NFL Scouting Combine is just a bunch of people talking football. It really can't be summed up in a better way than that. It's a bunch of people talking football in the early hours of the next day, I'll say. So not a lot of sleep was had during the NFL Scouting Combine, as it should be. Not a lot of sleep, but it's always a great experience. And, nothing that I'll take for granted. And the next part of this whole entire trip that I want to kind of touch on is just our CHGO Bears crew. This was before this. It was usually just Will and I, and we had Brandon, our old co-host at the time. We would go there, interview prospects, and that was really it. Now we had this amazing group of people just working together, and we're all writing articles, doing podcasts, putting video content out there, bonding, and that was awesome to experience. And I watched a lot more Big Ten basketball this past week than I have probably in a long time. So you got to see, Greg's Purdue Boilermakers play, Mark and his Northwestern Wildcats, even Adams Badgers go at it at certain times throughout the week. So it was good just being a part of that. And like I said, going to St. Elmo's, having the famous shrimp cocktail, not being able to breathe for a couple of seconds. I always look forward to that too. I used to hate it. The first time I tried it, I'm like, I'll never do this again. Couldn't imagine going to Indy and not doing that. That's such a big part of it. And, just getting a chance to work with that group, everyone behind the scenes in Chicago. I hope that the people who were taking in our content, however it was, through the podcast, scrolling through your Twitter, reading the articles, really enjoyed the work that we put behind it, because I thought, now reflecting back on it, we did a pretty damn good job. And we're only going to get better from here. So it was great being a part of that. But I mentioned the bonding, right? And right at the beginning of this video, I told you the last day. And the last day being that Friday. And we did our podcast. And after the podcast, and we knew this going into it, that Friday, the weather wasn't looking very good. Especially traveling back from Indy to Chicago. And there was debate whether or not we should go. In my mind, I always knew I was going to drive back after the podcast. I was just need to get back home. And so it was myself and Mark Carmen. And we're driving, for the first hour, it's fine. We're like, oh, it's just rain. There's nothing bad. It's fine. This is, maybe over exaggerated. The weatherman didn't know what he was talking about. Well, the weather turned for the worse. And I have never been in a more stressful, frightening situation, driving conditions, I should say, than that Friday afternoon. And Mark and I, we stopped by a gas station, so we had to pull off the main road, I-65, I believe. And then we stopped, got some snacks, used the bathroom, whatever. And then GPS was saying to take this kind of back road because it would save you time. And usually GPS is right? Google Maps, they know what they're doing. And so we take this 2-lane road. And it has not been, there hasn't been a plow on it. So it's basically snow, and you're trying to navigate through it. And it's only 10 miles. We're only going 10 miles. And I'm trying my hardest to keep the steering wheel, intact, to kind of get these grooves that have been made by the previous survivors that go through this. And like I said, 10 miles, we're going maybe 15 to 20 miles per hour. There's a concern about daylight. Not, that started to be a little bit of a concern. Like, okay, we need to get through this 10 miles in enough time, because I'm trying to look at the grooves that are on the ground, keep the steering wheel straight, hit enough gas, so we're kind of making progress here. And while I'm doing this, Mark is just kind of counting down. Okay, we got 8.4, 7.4 miles, 7.3. We're going really slow, and we need to get through this. And thankfully, there was a truck with a plow on it that starts kind of removing some of the snow. It was still difficult, but this made the journey a little bit easier. And I just remembered, once we finally got to the end, just having a huge relief. Like my leg was tense, my arms were tense. I know Mark was tense. It was something. Again, the most terrifying drive I've ever been a part of. I think I'm a pretty good driver, but it put everything to the test. And so we get off of this 2-lane road to hell and finally get on I-65 again, which wasn't very good in itself. There were so many car crashes. There was a semi that was literally sideways. It wasn't good, but it was better than that. And that's how the trip to Indy ended. We go through all the, not even ups and downs, but everything that happened, and that's the last part of it. But it just makes for a combine that I'll never forget. I can't forget it. Everything that happened, the people I talked to, the players we talked to, the work we did, again, just going out, that nightlife, and then that drive. That's a 2023 NFL Scouting Combine through my eyes. And hopefully you guys got to enjoy that a little bit. And, we'll have to see what next year, 2024, will bring. It's going to be hard to top. But this one was one I'll never forget. See you guys.